morning, everybody. Good afternoon, actually. I'm so glad to be here. As Rob just mentioned, we will discuss about the topic, why should we start with the purpose of esports? And this is why we have three different guests here, all different. One coming from the publishing ecosystem, one from our lovely endemic ecosystem, and finally, one from our lovely brand ecosystem. So Jessica, I will let you introduce yourself first, and then it will be Donald and then Mark.
Thank you, everybody. Can everybody hear? Great. So I am the head of marketing, and I'm heading up the marketing team covering Nordic and Baltics for MasterCard.
Oh, and I'm the product lead for WebXT Esports at Microsoft.
And I'm Mark. I'm the commercial director at Excel Esports.
Thank you very much, guys. So yeah, when we talk about purpose, it's basically we are in a fast-paced environment. There are new companies emerging every day in every country. We have different kind of ecosystem, different continents, different cultures. So I would start with one very broad question, which is, why is it important to be clear about the company's purpose? And I would like you, Mark, as an endemic player, to start discussing about that.
Yeah, so I think purpose should drive everything you do in the business. And it also helps you to be true to yourselves and what you're trying to achieve. So with Excel, our purpose is built around what we call the power of better. So believing that improvement never stops and you can always improve, which is agreed a bit broad, but so to try and narrow that down and to make it real and build pillars that we can deliver against, then we've built those around learning, sustainability and inclusion. So learning is clearly we want to continue to learn. I think that's from a competitive basis, how do we have to learn to evolve and be better, and being honest, we're an esports business and competitive success is at the heart of what we do, but also how do we learn within the business and create an environment where everybody has a voice and a mechanism which you can translate that voice to actions and improvement. But I think also learning from our community and how we serve our community, but also the wider gaming ecosystem and how we learn where we need to focus and the things that we need to address. Sustainability is clearly ecologically, but also how do we sustain our esports environment? How do we nurture new talent? How do we prolong the careers of the athletes that work for us? How do we support content creators? All of those good things. And then inclusion is really around how we create an inclusive environment. There are some particular challenges that we're all aware about in esports, and I think if we're being very honest with ourselves, we looked around the tent last night at the dinner environment. There were a lot of white males and not many women. So, and there's been a different approach to that in esports. Some teams have gone by taking on female teams, playing in leagues. We've gone down a route of talking to various representative groups within some of the underrepresented segments in the gaming space, because when we do what we're going to do, we want to make sure it's the right thing and not a tick in the box exercise that doesn't actually show an improvement and process in place of that. So for us, it's having three pillars that are fundamental to everything we do and the decisions we make in the business.
And we all know that esports is changing on a daily basis. Was these purposes already the same at the very beginning of Excel, or did they change alongside with the changes that occurred in the ecosystem?
Yes, I think it has changed. So in the early days of Excel, it was about winning competitions. It was an e-sport. Yeah. It was playing games, right? Albeit competitively and professionally. But now Excel's a much bigger beast, and we've got 50, 60 people in the engine room of the business, and a number of teams and talent representing us across 4 titles. So by the nature of the beast, it's very easy to lose focus on what you're trying to achieve as a business, but also to lose the ability to listen and learn from your employees. So we talk about talent. everyone in the business is talent, and they all need to be supported in the way that gets the best out of them and the best for the business. So yeah, it has changed, and the power better and the improvement and those pillars that I spoke about really kind of came into effect in a really driven in the business about a year, 12, 14 months ago.
Okay. And then to transition to you, Jessica, and MasterCard in general, while it could be difficult to stick to its initial purposes for a team like Excel, but other teams as well, for a brand who want to tap into this ecosystem, is it very complicated to define your purposes while it's already quite complex to understand the ecosystem itself when you're not from it? Or how did it work for MasterCard?
Of course, it could be difficult, but I also think that having a clear purpose is both internally and externally for MasterCard. And when it comes to internally, it's very important that the whole business, I mean, from new hires to the CEO, is aligned on the same purpose. And from an externally perspective, our experience says that if a company has a clear purpose, it sort of attracts new customers and partners, and within the B2B space that we often work on. So to have a clear purpose is very important.
And what's the story behind MasterCard and esports then? The purpose, everyone was aligned, we understood that. And how did it begin? And do you feel that you achieved it somehow right now?
We have many different purposes within MasterCard. If we look into sports and esports, our strategy for purposes around passions. We work with 10 different passion categories where sports is one of them. So it's very much about tapping into the target audience, and we are constantly renewing and overseeing our partner portfolio, and to truly engage and inspire and understand our target group. When it comes to inclusion in general, financial inclusion is, of course, one of our top priorities. For example, we have a global objective to bring in 1 billion people into the financial society. And we even have initiatives in Sweden, for example, where we support the elderly community to teach them and educate them around digital payments. So purposes can be both around sports and passions, but also within the financial sector.
All right. Let's finish this roundtable with probably one of the most complex companies as well. Publisher, but also a creator of ecosystem. How, when you're doing so many things, you have, I guess, purposes and not a purpose. And are these purposes complicated to decide internally? And why choosing to tap into esports when you're doing already so many different things? How it is connected with all the other activities for Microsoft?
Yeah, it's Microsoft is an interesting entity.
Yeah.
It is. It's not monolithic in structure or in culture. It is. I think of it as a loosely aligned society of semi-independent serfdoms that all kind of exist within this larger, city-state.
Yeah.
And as such, there's a lot of room for innovation, and you can think of like it as being hundreds of little startups. And that's really how esports, I mean, certainly there's been esports in Xbox, and certain games, Halo has a long history in esports, but then things like Forza and Gears of War, have become titles that were, sizable in the space. For us, it was really, the roots of it were actually in the Bing search engine. And it was simply, I mean, our purpose at the beginning was we were looking at we're very data driven, and we were looking at the search results, and we saw many years ago this incredible upward trend in people making search queries around esports. And what you'd get Liquipedia, or you'd get HLTV, and which is fine. I mean, there's certainly great places, but we thought there was a way to differentiate and create structured data. We started working with these companies, pulling in this information, trying to arrange it giving you a quick view that could give you a quick answer, but also leading you down the rabbit hole into those spaces. But to differentiate against our competitors isn't much of a purpose.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing, is that as we grew and as more areas around the company began to take notice of us, and we started working with Microsoft Research, and we started working with Xbox, we started working with MS Office and the Edge team and the Windows team. This purpose grew, and it had to align more to the overall umbrella mission of Microsoft, which is to empower every person on this planet to do more.
Yeah.
And that was a gateway for us.
Okay, so you feel that some of your purposes, of the purposes we discussed before, has been achieved so far. I will just take an example, and if you're not comfortable with it, we will just skip it and take another one. Halo, for example, had huge purposes. I remember when Microsoft first started to Halo, there was a lot of ambition, and unfortunately, we had a very good ecosystem. Then things fall down for a reason we will not elaborate here. And now it seems that, again, the purpose is here, the ambition is there. How do you struggle with that when everyone is aligned behind a purpose, because of the first question, and everything stops all of a sudden? Or maybe I'm a bit too hard with all of a sudden, but this is how I felt.
I mean, Microsoft is an interesting place because there's tremendous resources available to us, but also tremendous expectations.
Okay.
You know, the bar for getting the attention of our C-suite is for it to be $1 billion business. And when you look at gaming, you can easily say that meets the bar. When you look at esports, you can see a trend towards that bar. And it's always a vulnerable position for us. And that's why it's very important for us to align to, there's why we align to a mission internally and why we align to a mission externally.
Oh, yeah.
So if we are not perceived internally as being aligned to what the core company values are, privacy, security, trust, equality, transparency of data, like those sorts of things, we can very easily be considered too much of a risk for the investment that's being made. The good news is that there's tremendous power in us aligning externally to that. And we found an amazing, I think, in my interpretation of empowering everyone to do more, I've started to really focus on education and getting down at middle school, high school level, seeing the way that esports and gaming in general, which has can have a very, nature of war is a vacuum. And in absence of us having a point of view in this space, people talk about the violence in video games and the gender equality or inequality in video games, and these are all things that we can push against, and we can leverage the resources we have to make a positive difference.
Okay. And go back to Excel. It's nice to have purposes. You described them. But how do you manage to align everybody behind these purposes while you have players focusing on competition? You guys from the organization wanted it to grow as fast as possible. Overall, you're creating a brand, so everyone needs to be aligned on the purposes. You have to make it more appealing on a daily basis. And you have probably other verticals that not necessarily convey to your initial purposes. How is it hard or easy to align everybody toward the purpose?
So good question. So I think there's always a challenge, and certainly has been at Excel, around when you've got an esports part of the business, which is all around competitive success and performance, and then you've got the business side of the business, and how you kind of not fill the divide, but how you manage that divide in the business so that you do get the alignment that you talk about. So if you take competitive success, means winning, right? Or at least getting better and showing continued improvement. And to structure that in a way around those pillars that I talked about, so learning, how do we put in place the data systems and the tools that we need to support our talent, our players, our coaches, in terms of helping the team and them to be better. And then how do we help sustain the sustainability pieces? How do we help sustain their career, but also prepare them for post-game or post-career activities moving forward. So they want to go into coaching, performance management, etc. And even to Jessica's point, some of these guys are managing large sums of money and they haven't been around for very long, and how can we help them better plan for their futures, etc. And then from that inclusivity piece is helping them feel part of the bigger business. So the flip side to the business side is to understand how everything we do in the business is helping us achieve that competitive success, but also delivering value to our partners and to us as a team internally. So it is a bit of a challenge because you've got two diverse sets of the business, but having those clear focuses around those pillars and everyone in the company being aware of how what they do, whether it's in creative, whether it's in marketing, whether it's in partnerships, and how that all lines up together, at least enables you all to be on the same track.
Yeah, okay. I get that. How many people at Excel right now?
So on the gaming side of the business, we've got about 25 people, and then some content creation around that, and then on the business side, about 45 people. We've grown, I think, by 20 people in the last 7 or 8 months.
Okay, so roughly 70 people overall in the organization.
Yeah.
How many people at MasterCard, Jessica?
Around 20,000.
How do you align all these people with purposes? Excel seems complicated already, but they somehow manage, and there's 70. How to align all these people behind? I mean, not all of them are implicated into this purpose, of course, but I mean, when you mentioned that the CEO is gave basically the idea behind the purposes and stand for it, it's helping, but we know that when you need to implement stuff to make this purpose happen, to make this purpose successful, you need to align with not several people, but several people in several countries. And how difficult is that? I mean, for example, just the activation you made on League of Legends, was it super easy to implement because everyone was behind it, obviously, but was it complicated for the company, or was it quite easy to make it happen?
To respond to your first question regarding League of Legends, I think it was not difficult at all, because I think that MasterCard, from a global perspective, really did their homework. They understood that it's not just a marketing campaign thing we're doing. They really did their homework around trying to understand the target group, the importance of, engaged with the target audience, and the different types of activations we can do, and how to connect with their passions, basically. To your second question regarding how easy it is to get everybody aligned internally, I would say it's not just the people. I assume that both you guys have several different strategies within the company. It's not just sponsorship strategies, it's business strategies, course marketing strategies, it's branding strategies, etc., etc. But I also think that obviously our core business is to work with our banks, our card issuers and acquirers, to stimulate volume and drive spend on our card and transactions. But always going back to the purpose again. What is your core values? For us, it's sustainability, it's inclusion, and innovation, as an example. How can we do our ordinary work to drive business and volumes, and at the same time put the top layer on that? How can we be more inclusive? How can we be more sustainable in our communication, etc., etc.? So you need to put all the different strategies on top of each other and see how you can make the best impact out of everything, basically. Because there's a lot of people who own strategies in a company that you need to please.
All right, thank you. And we go from 10,000 to I don't even know how many thousand. And I guess
over 200,000.
200,000.
Over
yeah.
60,000 in the Seattle urban area alone.
Brilliant. And but I guess that there are so many departments that it's quite difficult. But again, we would love to understand how we can get people on board in such a massive company. Yes, we know you have processes and all that stuff. A lot of people can be on board way more easily than in startup, for example. But you implement stuff on the global level, or exclusive on the global level usually. Correct me if I'm wrong. So how do you do that? And especially for esports, where, correct me again if I'm wrong, not a lot of people are familiar, even inside Microsoft. They know what it is, but they are not that familiar. So it's quite having a startup inside a big company.
It's really easy. Yeah, it's a lot of social engineering. And there's tremendous ways to do it. I mean, first thing is, doing favors for people, figuring out ways that we can leverage the technology we have to help some of our partner teams make their experiences better. And even in unsurprising ways, like we found, I learned about the Financial Modeling World Cup, which is literally, it was eight people from 8 countries competing on Excel spreadsheets. And it was, I was like, this has got to happen. I went to Xbox, I went to Office. I was like, this is the most amazing thing. This is such a Microsoft esport. And I got them on board. We went, marketed the heck out of it. We got more than 60 news articles, got like 500,000 views on YouTube for truly not, but if you think about it, it's kind of like, it's no different than a game like Smash Brothers Ultimate. It's to those who don't understand it, it's just a big mess of just stuff flying around. But there's other things too. A lot of public service within the company. We have a hackathon every year where several thousand projects come together. We always sponsor hackathons. We encourage gamers from around the company and get them to come together, use our technology, make cool stuff. Right now, we're in the middle of our Give campaign, which is for 1 month during the year. We encourage everyone in the company to donate to charity. And we're running a company-wide gaming tournament, running it on our Smash GG platform with 20 different game titles. And it's several hundred people. It's not several 100,000 people. But if you think of each of these people as agents of change, some of those people work in Windows, some work in Excel, some work in Office. This is where the social engineering comes in. And we plant seeds of influence everywhere. And we encourage, we are inclusive, and we say to everyone we meet, like, how can you help us? And the truth is, there's a tremendous amount of people who have a 9-to-5 job, accountants, lawyers, not just like, software engineers that would love nothing more than to figure out how to do it. So it's not as hard as you might think.
Okay. But, do you feel that it's the fact that esports is a passionate ecosystem, usually driven by passionate people themselves, that it was more easy to implement these purposes rather than for a traditional industry? Or is it just the fact that you felt that it was overall easy?
I hadn't thought of that, but I think you're right. I think what I find is the people who play esports, who watch esports, who compete within the company, they are extremely passionate and extremely energetic, and they manage to have a very high demanding day job, and still we have, like, there are some of the top Rocket League players in the world are Microsoft employees. There is a corporate esports competition where Microsoft, Amazon, Google, they have teams, they compete against each other, and we regularly kind of scrub the floor with Amazon, and like in chess and Rocket League and other things, and these folks just they have so much energy to not only do their job but to compete and practice. And I think it speaks to just the benefits of esports. We know that there's a strong connection between like software developers and classical music training. And I think in a similar way we can look at software development and technical mindset and the structure, the rigor that's required to excel at esports as well. So they naturally go together.
What about you, Jessica? Do you feel that it was because the purposes was around esports that it was way easy to implement them, or did you feel there wasn't a change inside the company since MasterCard?
So, sorry, the question was the purpose?
The question about the purpose is basically, did you feel that as the purposes we just mentioned and discussed was around esports, was more easy to implement rather than if it was purposes around another topic more related to the banking system, for example?
I think definitely it's easier to apply purposes regarding financial inclusion at this point. I think we have sort of just started the journey around purposes within esports. I think we can do a lot better going forward, but at least it's ambition to do whatever we can to, for example, drive gender equality. And we actually had a project with one of our larger issuers here in France, Société Générale, sorry for my bad French, where we set up the MasterCard Nexus tournament together with Société Générale, and at the same time we worked with an organization called Women in Games, and in parallel drove an 8-month incubator program where we coached the female gamers, we inspired them, and we worked with them for 8 months. So I think that's at least a start and one good example, but I think there's so much more to do around purposes and potentially gender equality within esports. And looking into other types of sports, it's taken hundreds of years to be more equally in sports, and of course, due to what type of sports we're referring to, there will still be physical attributes that men and women can't really compete. And therefore I think esport has a golden opportunity to early on erase those differences, because they can compete so much more equally. But it's not just to say that you should drive gender equality, you need to act and do things as well.
Definitely, and that's actually a very good conclusion. So even though I didn't ask you, Mark, about you, but I really like the conclusion. So unless you have something to add, is there someone among you guys that has question to our 3 guests? Obviously no. Yeah, definitely. So thank you very much. Looking forward to talking to you during the rest of the esports bar. And yeah, enjoy your stay.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.